I met my wife 24 years ago. I have always been a loner and a low libido male. I didn't make this any sort of secret when we got together. I am also demisexual, meaning I really can only be intimacy with people I have a strong bond with. And before anyone asks, there is nothing medically wrong with me. My testosterone levels are fine, I work out and eat right, I have friends and hobbies, and most importantly to this story, I don't look at intimacy videos. Anyway, I like to have intimacy about once a week, sometimes every 2 weeks. Sometimes I initiate, sometimes she does. I personally like to be overwhelmed with passion right before doing it. I consider it a special occasion and not something that is done every day. When I met her, I explained this to my wife, and not only did she agree, but she found it very romantic. So it has been a good 2 decades since then. We have been through ups and downs, but we stick together. That was until she made a Reddit account. About a month after that, she approached me about having a look through my phone, and I said sure, why not? I didn't give it any thought. A bit later, she asked to put Drupal on it. For those that don't know, this is a monitoring app that takes screenshots of what you are looking at. This struck me as odd, and I asked about it, and she said she was feeling insecure lately and wanted it. Perhaps stupidly, I didn't push the issue further and just agreed. I barely used my phone anyway, so who cares? I really started to hear alarm bells when she started getting much more intimacy. She wanted to try kinks she never had any interest in before. She bought sexy clothes and began to cling to me throughout the day. I would still turn her down, but instead of it being nothing, suddenly she would just stop talking to me for a day or only make dinner for herself and say that she forgot to make me any. I also noticed she appeared to be glued to her phone all the time. Everyone is always on their phones, so the fact that I noticed this should show how excessive it was. I only got glances, but she would either be looking at Drupal or Reddit. Obviously, her odd behavior caused the bedroom to dry up. I'm like some kind of sensitive fish that needs a certain pH level to get going, so this disruption in our life made me lose interest in initiating, which further worsened the problem. Around a month ago, I started to finally demand some kind of explanation as to what was going on. I heard that people sometimes change like this when they get brain tumors, so I was genuinely worried that there was something seriously wrong with her. She then lashed out at me, saying she knew, and that she knew she wasn't enough anymore. It was very heated, as now I thought she was accusing me of cheating, and she sort of was. This is admittedly an educated guess on how the timeline went. I asked her before, but she tends to shut down before telling me too much. First, I believe she found the Reddit community dead bedrooms on the most popular page while scrolling and found a couple that was a bit like us, with a low libido male, and learned that if a man isn't constantly trying to have intimacy with you and making comments, it means that his intimacy energy must be, as she put it, going somewhere else. Due to my sexuality, she knows for certain that I'm not cheating physically. We also live in a very small town, and I work out of our garage. But a certain comment said that if he isn't intimacy with you, he is 100% an intimacy videos addict and linked to the Reddit community Love After Porn. That's when she learned how to spot the addiction, and I had all the telltale signs. I asked her what the signs were, and she said she didn't owe a gaslighter an explanation. I immediately asked to see her phone, and she said no and said I should sleep on the couch until I'm ready to come clean. Unfortunately for her, I know her Reddit username and was only asking to be cordial. I looked at her recent posts and comment history and was sickened. Her post on the Reddit community Love After Porn started off sane, but then spiraled out of control with commenters egging her on with stuff like, "You don't need evidence if you feel it in your gut." It was insane. My wife has always had a level of anxiety, and this space she has found appears to have ignited her biggest insecurities. I then found the post that insinuated that she was going to leave me if I didn't confess soon, to the great celebration of the commenters, which scared me, and for the first time, I felt that my marriage was in real danger. The next day, I admitted to her that I read her post history and said we need to go into counseling. She agreed, but for the wrong reasons, and said she already found a certified intimacy addiction therapist in the area that specializes in intimacy videos addiction. I lost my cool. I demanded to know how I could possibly be looking at intimacy videos if I'm demisexual, have truple, and am basically in line of sight at all times. To which she replied that I could be looking at it while taking a bathroom break by getting around truple in some complicated way. We yelled back and forth, and I decided to stay at a friend's for the night, from which I am now writing on his computer. I have no idea what to do. Everything I say is turned around on me as classic addict gaslighting. I really want to save this. Please help. Now for an update. First of all, the Reddit community Love After Porn is not a hate sub. This is not open season to go on there and start harassing the people that use it. It is a safe space for the spouses of addicts and a very important community on this website. This isn't about them. Do not harass them. Also, advice telling me to divorce my wife will be ignored. This is a rough patch, but I love her and will do so until the day I die. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I think that despite your good years together, your wife has never truly felt happy with regards to the libido mismatch and just kept it to herself. That's not your fault. You were open about your intimacy needs or lack thereof from the get-go. I'm sure she thought it wasn't a big deal at first, but maybe years of rejection, where she was in the mood and you weren't, started to impact her self-esteem. If that's the case, finding an enemy in your fictional corn addiction might give her a sense of relief, like, finally I know the real reason. This is all very hypothetical, but if I'm right, having a more tangible excuse for the rejection would be hard for her to let go of. Again, this is all guesswork. I think she's convinced herself over the years that your low libido had to be her fault somehow, and the idea that it was actually corn addiction all along erases those feelings. I think she just doesn't actually understand low libido or demisexuality, even if she says she does. I don't know how you get through to her, but a counseling environment is certainly better than yelling at a brick wall. This is turning into hurtful behavior on her part. I'm sorry you're going through this. Comment 2. So this might be a weird explanation, but have you considered menopause or premenopause? My mother swore up and down that my father was cheating when she was going through menopause. She was convinced he was seeing another woman, to the point she almost convinced me. There were weird things that she truly believed to be signs or evidence of his cheating. I believed her when she said she knew it in her heart, but from an outside perspective, a lot of her evidence against him didn't make sense. I thought she might be having a mental breakdown at some point. My mother and I had a lot of heart-to-heart conversations at that time, and so did my dad and I. He was very confused and hurt by her accusations. Eventually, they were able to get through that time. Even now, my mom acknowledges that she was not herself at that point in time. I see some similarities in your wife's actions that remind me of how my mother was acting at the time. I hope not, but maybe having a conversation with your wife and her doctor might be a good idea. Now for the update. I'm back with an update. It's been a while since I stayed with a friend to chill out. Time flies, huh? Anyway, my wife and I decided to really try to make our marriage work. So we agreed to go to couples counseling together. I was unsure at first, but I was desperate, I guess. The first session was pretty awkward. My wife brought up her worries about my commitment, which was fun. The therapist suggested we each write down our feelings before the next session. I didn't even know where to start with that. Like, how do I sum up 24 years of marriage in a few bullet points? But whatever, I gave it a shot. When we got home, I noticed my wife was on her phone more than usual. At first, I didn't think much of it. You know how it is, life is busy, right? But then I found this text thread between her and a member of the Love After Porn community. Yeah, that community. The messages were about our relationship and how to fix it. It made me feel uneasy, but I kept my cool. I figured I could address it in therapy. No need to make things worse at home, right? During the next session, though, I brought up the texts, and wow, did that cause a fight. She accused me of invading her privacy, which was ironic coming from her, but I let it slide. After the session, we had a family dinner at my parents' house. My parents were all excited to see us together, completely unaware of the big issue we were dealing with. At dinner, my mom asked about our plans for the future. That made my wife visibly uncomfortable. She abruptly left the table, saying she needed fresh air. I excused myself to follow her and found her crying outside. We had a brief conversation, but she was evasive about what was bothering her. I returned to the dinner, feeling the weight of my family's concern. It was just too much, you know. The next week, I stumbled upon something that really shook me. I found out my wife had been attending secret meetups with a group. I saw a calendar reminder on her phone about a group gathering. When I confronted her about it, we had this huge argument about trust and boundaries. She claimed this group was helping her work through her insecurities. Yeah, right. The following weekend, we had this planned family outing to a local fair. It was supposed to be fun, but my wife seemed distant the whole day. Instead of enjoying time with family, she was glued to her phone. At one point, she got a call and walked away, which made everyone a little concerned. I overheard snippets of her conversation, and she mentioned feeling lost. After the fair, I decided to snoop through her stuff while she was in the shower. Yeah, I know, not my proudest moment, but I was desperate, right? I found this notebook filled with entries about our relationship and her doubts. She was really digging deep, and it scared me. We attended another counseling session where the therapist pushed for more honesty, and wow, did we get it. My wife confessed she had been considering separating to find herself. This revelation escalated our conflict into a full-blown argument. I was so done with this back and forth. I proposed a trial separation instead of an outright divorce to give us both some space. My wife reluctantly agreed, seeing it as a way to address our issues. We set some boundaries for the separation, including regular check-ins and no outside relationships. We were determined to do this right, whatever that meant. In the following weeks, I focused on my own hobbies and reconnecting with friends. It felt good to have some me time, even though things were rocky at home. Surprisingly, the trial separation led to unexpected clarity for both of us about our needs. We began to communicate more openly, sharing our thoughts honestly. It was like we were dating again, but with way more baggage. Eventually, we decided to take a weekend trip together to reconnect. We needed a fresh start, even if it was just temporary. After the trip, we returned home with a renewed sense of partnership and commitment. It was like we were both willing to fight for this, but we knew it would take time. So yeah, that's where we're at. It's not perfect, but we're working on it. Edit. It's been a few months since the update. We've made progress in counseling, focusing on communication and trust. The process has been tough, but we're both more committed to understanding each other. Am I the idiot for demanding my in-laws stop calling me best friend instead of wife? My husband Robbie and I got married earlier this year. It was a beautiful day, and I felt so much love and support from both sides of our family. 2 months after our wedding day, we celebrated my birthday at my in-laws' house. It was nothing major, just a dinner and a night together with me, my husband, his mom, dad, and sister. That is the first night I noticed them referring to me as Robbie's best friend. After my birthday dinner, we were all sitting together in the living room, just chatting and having some drinks. That's when my sister-in-law got a phone call from a good friend of hers. When she answered the phone and her friend asked what she was doing, she replied that it was her brother's best friend's birthday. I had never heard anyone refer to me as Robbie's best friend. I am his wife, and before that, we were engaged for over 2 years. Hearing my sister-in-law refer to me like that confused me greatly. I always refer to her as my sister-in-law, and I would expect her to do the same. Or maybe even as Robbie's wife, but certainly not best friend. After my sister-in-law hung up the phone, I asked her why she referred to me the way she did. She did not seem at all abashed. She just said, "Well, you are best friends, and that's what Mom and Dad call you," referring to my mother-in-law and father-in-law. My sister-in-law and I are by no means very close, but we are nice to each other and have never had any fights. We just don't hang out outside of family functions because our personalities are pretty different. She's never made it seem like she was annoyed or mad at me. I decided to let it go that night, even though it weirded me out. But then it all happened again a few days ago, which is why I'm writing this post. My mother-in-law and I both work in the same industry, doing similar jobs, but at different companies in the area. Sometimes our companies collaborate when we have clients who switch over. This week we had that happen, and I had to pay a visit to my mother-in-law's office to help a client transition. My mother-in-law was in the office, so I stopped by to say hello. While I was there, she introduced me to her colleague, and once again I was perplexed by how she did it. She said, "This is my son's best friend," as I was shaking hands with the colleague. I paused and awkwardly said, "I'm his wife." The colleague looked confused, but my mother-in-law continued to smile and didn't address it. Once we were alone, I asked my mother-in-law why she referred to me like that. Just like my sister-in-law, she didn't seem to act like it was weird at all and said the same thing. "Well, you are best friends." The only thing that I can think to explain this is that in my vows to Robbie, I promised to continue being his best friend. Nobody acted like this was odd or special, and I feel like it's a pretty common thing to put in vows. So I'm not sure why Robbie's family seems to have clung to it, unless it has nothing to do with everything. I've spoken to Robbie about this too, and he is also perplexed by it. He asked his parents privately about it, and they gave him the same answer they've been giving me. It all just feels like some sort of bullying behavior to me, but I've never felt a sense of this from them before. Are they calling me his best friend because they don't like the fact that I'm his wife? Or is it some inside joke they've been in on without me? I'm not sure what to do or make of it, especially because the in-laws are acting like it's not an issue when I bring it up. Yes, I am Robbie's best friend, but I'm also his life partner and their daughter-in-law, sister-in-law. I don't know what to do. Any input or advice would be welcome. Now for an update. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. My mother-in-law used to call me my husband's friend too when we had been engaged on purpose to belittle my importance in his life. Not saying this is what they are doing. It may be innocent, but it may not. I would sit them down for a dinner. Be friendly but firm that you don't appreciate being introduced as your husband's best friend when you are his wife. Whether they are trying to or not, it is disrespectful. If you do this, you need your husband to also speak up about it. Hopefully, it can be solved with a face-to-face confrontation. Comment 2. I would honestly be petty and feign concern that my mother-in-law has dementia next time she does this. Pull out the concerned eyebrows and a gentle, "Mother-in-law, is everything okay? I'm Robbie's wife, not his best friend. Are you having trouble remembering things lately? Should we go see the doctor?" You could also just mock her and exclusively introduce her to everyone as your coworker or a friend of your husband and wait for her to say something. Now, for the update. 1 week after that post, I went to Robbie's parents' house for a family dinner. This one was to celebrate Robbie's promotion at work. I was excited and thought this could be the moment to talk to them about the whole best friend thing. You know, when things are chill and everyone's in a good mood, or so I thought. So during dinner, Robbie's dad raised a toast. I was all ready to hear something sweet about his son and his new promotion. But no, he goes and calls me Robbie's best friend again. Like, what the actual heck? I could feel the tension rising, and my hopes of addressing the issue during a chill moment just went out the window. After dinner, while the family was all cozy in the living room, I pulled Robbie aside. I told him how uncomfortable I was with the whole best friend title. I mean, I'm his wife, not just some random friend. He was supportive and agreed that it was odd, but he suggested that we wait for the right moment to talk to his parents. I was like, okay, I can deal with this for a bit longer. Later that week, I got an invitation to a family barbecue on the weekend. I thought it'd be a good idea to prepare a dish that showed off my cooking skills, hoping to impress everyone, you know? I made this unalived lasagna that my mom used to make. At the barbecue, I overheard Robbie's sister jokingly call me my brother's best friend. While laughing with their friends, I just stood there like, are you kidding me right now? So I went to find Robbie and we started talking about the best way to address this with his family. We agreed to bring it up together after the barbecue. During the meal, I noticed my mother-in-law showing off pictures of Robbie and his sister during their childhood. She's all like, look at my son and my daughter, and look at his best friend. Again, the best friend thing. I'm so over it. After dinner, Robbie and I gathered the family in the living room. I knew it was now or never, so I spoke up and addressed the title issue directly. Robbie backed me up, saying I'm his wife, not just his best friend. Everyone looked surprised. I mean, did they really think we were just going to let this slide? Robbie's mom was taken aback and insisted that it was meant as a term of endearment. I calmly explained that the title diminished my role in the family. She had to know that. Then, finally, Robbie's dad acknowledged the issue, admitting it was a misunderstanding. The family dynamics began to shift after that. Everyone started discussing their relationships openly. It was like a breath of fresh air, you know? After the barbecue, I got a text from Robbie's sister apologizing for her comments. I was shocked but glad she realized how hurtful her words were. A week later, Robbie's parents invited us over for dinner to celebrate the new understanding. I was a little nervous but excited. At the dinner, for the first time, I was introduced as Robbie's wife. I could have cried. The family seemed genuinely happy, and they were eager to include me in conversations. The night ended with everyone sharing memories from the past. Guess what? I was included as part of the family. It felt so good. Robbie's parents expressed their desire to support our marriage moving forward, and I just knew this was the start of something awesome. As we drove home, Robbie mentioned how proud he was of how I handled the situation. We talked about future family events and felt so optimistic about our role together. This whole experience brought us even closer, and I know we're ready to face anything together. I'm just so relieved and happy. I was so anxious about how they'd react, but things turned out way better than I expected. It's honestly such a relief to finally be seen as part of the family. It made me realize how important it is to communicate and stand up for yourself, and I'm glad I did. I'm looking forward to making more memories with Robbie and his family, and just experiencing all the good times ahead. Wish me luck. Edit. After this, things have been pretty great with Robbie's family. It's been smooth sailing and genuinely fun at family events. The only challenge was when Robbie's mom asked me for my lasagna recipe. She wanted to make it for her book club, and I happily shared. It's been a bonding experience for us. Am I the idiot for refusing to be my sister's doormat while she plays house with her irresponsible boyfriend? I moved across the country, Canada, with my son, who is 14 years old, and my dog to start anew. I asked my sister, who is 36 years old, to join me in the city. She lived in a small town 2 hours south of where we live now. I accepted a job offer, as did my sister, and we signed a 3-year fixed rental agreement for a 3-bedroom house. My sister and I are very different people. We have a complicated but supportive relationship. We have a lot of love and respect for one another. We also have some on and off codependency issues from our childhood. Things were going well for the first few months. We were transitioning into this dynamic, and it wasn't always easy, but we found systems and ways to make it work. Everything changed 3 months ago. My sister met a man and conceived on their first date. The baby is due in April. It's a welcome surprise. My sister is experiencing a difficult start to her pregnancy, insomnia, stress, and thyroid issues. We have not been getting along. My son and I can do nothing right. It's the little things compounded. My sister is also quite entitled. She openly expresses and reinforces this attribute with humor. During her pregnancy, it's been worse. There's little to no consideration. For example, she's struggling with the sound in the house. She leaves her door open for her cat and refuses to wear earplugs. Instead, she demands my son and me to vacate the living room and kitchen at 8 p.m. because she can hear us. I don't get home until 7 p.m. and need to make dinner. Another example is that I had been giving her upwards of $600 per month for groceries. I have a lot of allergies, and she wouldn't accommodate these allergies, so I would often need to eat alone and buy additional groceries. It hurt me to learn that she had her groceries supplemented by the father of her unborn child, meaning that she had been asking for money for groceries that were already paid for. My salary is less than my sister's, and I have a dependent. She decided that the child's father, who is 36 years old, would move into this house with his dog and his cat and sleep in the foyer at the top of the stairs without consulting myself or my son. This area of the house is not closed in. It's positioned above the living room and kitchen. an area that my sister has already deemed inaccessible between 8 p.m. and 6 a.m., and also between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m. My son and I are starting to get forced into our bedrooms off the entry hallway. They split up 2 weeks ago, and he's still moving in. He's a bit of a dirty guy, and my sister is type A. To put things into perspective, she has cleaned out his house and his 2 storage units in the last 3 months. He's not much of a cook or cleaner. She said that I'm lucky because I get to benefit financially from this. I'll pay less in rent, and I don't even deserve it. Those were her actual words. I actually like the guy. I don't like the way my sister treats him, but he's a nice guy. I moved for a lot of reasons. My son was experiencing anxiety and self-esteem issues around his father, who was never married and separated after the birth of our son, and has been in and out of the picture, having drained our collective savings account for the kids' education because of addiction. I wasn't able to secure a suitable salary with my education to get ahead. To be fully honest here, my sister and I had a hard upbringing. The only reason I stayed in our hometown was so that my son had access to his father, and a time came where his father's absence would be more beneficial than his presence. I moved so that we could start a new life and have peace. We are not experiencing peace. I confronted my sister about the use of communal spaces and that she would have to find solutions to limit the way sound affected her. I confronted my sister about shared bills and have asked her to post the bills on the fridge and that we would no longer be splitting most groceries. I confronted my sister that I'm not entirely comfortable with someone moving in here. It's not within the rights of our lease, and we would need to communicate this with the landlord and ask to break the lease. My sister's response to everything has been emotional, reluctant, and avoidant. She simply cries, yells, and walks away. She claims that I am abandoning her. I feel exhausted, exploited, and manipulated. It's affecting my work, my personal life, and my ability to enjoy life. My son is experiencing some anxiety too. He has sports and extracurricular activities most days after school, and I am adamant about discussing adult things without my son there. However, he has witnessed some arguments and knows that we are not getting along. I want to leave this situation. I know I have to. I feel like I am abandoning her, not just because she tells me so, but because everything is chaotic and I want to leave. I didn't sign up for this. I don't agree to live with my sister, her estranged ex-boyfriend of 3 months, and his 2 pets. I don't know where to start or how to do this. I know I need a couple of months to save up for first and last month's rent. To add, I removed some details to keep privacy intact. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Goodness, what a terrible situation. When it comes to "you're abandoning me" stuff, just communicate that it is actually her that has abandoned the way of life that was built. It's like if you're in a boat paddling down a river, that's the way you've set up your life, and you want to just keep doing that, paddling down the river. Your sister is in another boat and has decided to paddle in a different direction. You have stayed the course in your life and just don't want to change that course. It's up to your sister if she wants to continue with you or not. You explain to her what you are going to be doing regarding the living situation and that if she wants to continue it with you, then she is doing it your way, or she needs to move back home. Comment 2. Are you abandoning her, or are you prioritizing your son and your own well-being? When someone tells you you're doing something wrong, examine what they have to gain from this narrative. Your sister is manipulating you, defrauding you of grocery money, infringing on your reasonable enjoyment and expectations of peace in your home, and blaming you for it all. She is not a good sister, I'm sorry to say. Please go to the landlord. Let them know she has moved in another adult who isn't on the lease, and ask to be let out. Now, for the update. 2 days after my last update, my sister asked for help organizing the nursery for the baby. I didn't want to, but I thought it would be a good way to keep things calm, so I reluctantly agreed. It was just me and my sister in the house, my son was at a friend's place, and the boyfriend was still missing. We got started with her telling me how she wanted things organized. As we were sorting through baby clothes, she casually mentioned that her boyfriend was moving in for good. She said it was for financial reasons. I felt really frustrated. remembering how messy he had been when he was living with us temporarily. I kept quiet, though. We finished up the organizing, and I went to make dinner. Her boyfriend showed up just in time for dinner. I don't know if he knew that dinner was going to be on the table, but he sure timed it perfectly. I told them to wash their hands before dinner and sat down with them. During dinner, he made a joke about how I should tidy up after my dog. He probably thought I would laugh along with them, but all I could do was sit there in awkward silence. My sister laughed at the joke. I could tell she was siding with her boyfriend. I felt so alone. After dinner, I cleaned up the mess by myself while they sat on the couch watching TV. I told them good night and went to my room. Early the next morning, I went into the living room to check on my son. I found his video game console missing. I searched the house and discovered the boyfriend had taken it to play with his friends. I was so mad. I confronted my sister about the missing console, but she dismissed it as me overreacting. We ended up getting into an argument. She accused me of being jealous of her new life. I couldn't believe how self-righteous she was being. I spent the rest of the day fuming while trying to figure out how to get the console back. I decided to take my son out for ice cream to distract him from the situation. While at the ice cream shop, I saw an old neighbor from my previous town. She asked how life was going. I didn't want to get into it, but I ended up telling her a brief summary of my chaotic living situation. I mentioned the boyfriend's behavior and how he had taken my son's video game console. The neighbor expressed concern and mentioned she had heard rumors about my sister's boyfriend from other residents. I brushed it off. I thought it was just gossip, but it did make me doubt a bit. When I returned home, I found my sister and the boyfriend arguing loudly. The boyfriend stormed out, slamming the door behind him and causing my son to jump in surprise. My sister immediately blamed me for the tension, saying I was a bad influence on her life choices. I told her I was stepping back to let her handle her own mess. A few days later, I noticed the boyfriend had started bringing his friends over a lot. They often stayed late, playing loud music and ignoring my need for quiet. One night, I found my son still awake at midnight because of the noise. I knocked on my sister's door to ask if they could keep it down, but she refused to answer. I was fed up. I called the landlord to discuss breaking the lease early. I explained the living conditions I was living in. The landlord informed me that breaking the lease would require financial penalties. My sister confronted me about the call, accusing me of being selfish and trying to ruin her happiness. I tried to explain my perspective, but she wouldn't listen. Our argument got really heated, and she kicked me out of the shared living space. I had nowhere to go, so I took my son to stay with a friend for a few days. She had the boyfriend move in completely, leaving me without any support. While at my friend's house, I received a message from my sister demanding I return to collect my belongings. I felt a mix of anger and disbelief as I packed my things while my son watched. I couldn't believe how quickly everything had fallen apart. Edit: I never expected things to unravel so quickly. I learned that the boyfriend had a history of not paying his share of bills, which was concerning. My sister and I have since not spoken much. I found a new apartment and signed a lease. It feels good to start fresh again. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.